So at the largest scales, we want to create transitions that connect the user's action to the resulting change. Motion can bring clarity to the changes in context and improve the understanding of the relationship between different spaces. And animation at smaller scales can tell a story when space is limited. For example, these micro-transitions can give cues about the changes in state or reinforce functionality through motion or drive discoverability. And these principles around familiarity, choreography, and craftsmanship have really been the foundation of a lot of the design work we've been doing recently. And now Helen, Manuel, and Gus are going to talk a little bit more about how we've put these to practice in desktop, handsets, and wearables.
I'll be diving into detail about the ways we've been exploring the loading experience in ways that alleviate the wait time. So loading, an often overlooked but an extremely common occurrence, is an opportunity for consistent control across different contexts. We started off by combining a refresh icon and a loading spinner for a seamless and simple correlation. Spinner is the original activity indicator crafted in detail with an organic pattern. Playing with how dynamic colors can complement the whole system and framework, and in this scrolling instance, Spinner is paired with an ink splash inspired by the touch ripple effect to indicate an initiation. A suite of progress and activity indicators, circular or linear, are designed with synchronized cadence. Whether it's a swipe down to refresh on mobile or opening a message on tablet, the acceleration curves and rotational rhythm are choreographed to follow the same organic pattern. We've also thought about how these can be tailored to a variety of uses. In this Chrome OS update instance, we thought about how the indicators can behave like bookends for distinct beginning and end. A field of color marks an initiation, and an equally dramatic ink splash punctuates, a marker of completion. On top of all this, we thought about how an image would load, and we were inspired by the way photographs are exposed onto paper and developed in a darkroom for a natural and familiar process. We've broken it down to 3 basic phases: opacity, exposure, and saturation. The image would fade in at a low contrast exposure, followed by a full color saturation. Form factors with larger surface areas are the ideal places to pronounce this type of image treatment, such as logging into Chrome OS.
Thank you. Hello. So Ellen showed you a Chrome OS example, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the way we use motion on Chrome across desktop and mobile. Okay, so in the case of a desktop or laptop OS, we're dealing with many windows on the screen, and depth is key to ensuring users feel in control of their experience as they change applications and kind of manage their experience. So here, we're using material shadows to communicate quite a bit of depth there. Now see what's happening. The UI is actually not being scaled up, even though it looks like it's coming closer to you. Simply by using the right curves and the appropriate durations and the right properties on that shadow, you create this nice crafted smooth transition. We've all seen shadows like this. The fact that it's nicely transitioning like this creates a great continuity between the states. Moving on, this is Chrome OS. You guys know Chrome OS, Chromebooks. In Chrome OS, we have an app launcher, and this app launcher has this feature now that allows you to group applications. And Android, you can do that too. Now on Chrome OS, the app launcher is already a floating box. Okay, folder usually opens up as a popping box as well. We don't want to do that. We don't want to put a floating box on top of a floating box. So in this case, we're using material ink and material response, where ink is shrinking and growing and creating this nice ink bubble metaphor for a folder. And so you see the same bubble kind of appearing, disappearing, and throughout the different states that you're going through as a user. It creates this familiar thing there. It's really nice. Next, let's take a look at a Chrome for mobile prototype. Here, we're looking at finding a way to transition from very different states. See this right here? That's a very different state from this one. All these icons are there, and then they're not there anymore. And if you just like flip a bit in your code, you like hide, show, it's not going to look very good. In this case, imagine the person is touching the screen. Boom! A circle of energy flies out of there and pushes items out of the way, back into the scene. It feels like you're creating a story for the user through choreography and motion. Finally, let's look at the Chrome OS again. Large screens present quite a bit of a challenge. You've seen a lot of examples of smaller mobile screens. Now, making something fly up and down that screen may not be a huge issue. Imagine you're looking at a screen that's much bigger, like 20-inch, for example, or 17-inch, even a 13-inch laptop. You want to avoid forcing your users to scan around, like, is my window coming to the left, to the right, to the left, and it's just crazy. So one way to do this is exploration. Looking at ways to go whoops, like have very short animations to show, hey, the window just went toward the close button, or the window just flew from the button on the taskbar, therefore probably opened the application, things like that. So even though those animations are really short, because we're using the right curves and material, and we're very thoughtful about the way things are moving on the screen, you create tangibility and familiarity to animations and communicate those states really well. Now, you've seen really a large screen now, and challenges and solutions we're exploring. Gus is going to show you similar challenges and solutions for tiny screens like this.
Thank you, Manuel. You know, I just love motion design. I think they are it's a powerful design tool, and still it can be subtle. And we use that a lot when designing for wearables. So because of its small screen, we don't have space for multiple panels or different buttons for every action that we can take in every screen, and nor we have space for white space. So in order to fully express the material design language on such a small screen, we needed to use a lot of motion design to cover for all those functions, and also to make the device fun and easy to use. So right from the start, even before you start interacting with the device, we have added a simple animation that explains the structure navigation of the wearable device. Is a pretty simple one. You scroll up and down to navigate through different pieces of content, and you swipe right to dismiss a content. So even though it's pretty simple, it's just enough to get you started, so you feel comfortable using the device. As you start using the device and you face situations you have never encountered before, motion design is there to suggest how to interact with it. So in this case, incoming call, you swipe one side to accept a call, or the other side to reject a call. We then end up with a very simple stream of cards where we show one content at a time. And so we quickly realized that it was very important to work on the transitions between those contents. So we orchestrated all elements present on both screens, and for example, the acceleration of the card, the crossfade of the background, and the parallax movement in order to make these transitions feel smooth. And actually, we want to feel invisible, because you're going to interact with it a lot of times. We have also brought animations that we are used to in other devices to wearables, not before making some tweaks and improvements. Let's take, for example, the nod animation. So nodding is something that we do every day when interacting with other people. When we are talking to them, we just nod to acknowledge their presence, to give a non-verbal feedback. And it helps to create a friendly environment for a conversation to take place. So we wanted to take this environment and bring it to our UI, and we use that with a nod using a very simple motion design. We have also created a full set of animations that they all cover a very specific function in the UI, but we have crafted those animations in such detail in order to make every micro interaction feel rewarding. So let's take the sending a message, for example. So you have just sent a message using your new wearable, using your voice, without even touching your phone. So that's a pretty amazing task you have just accomplished. So we wanted the confirmation animation for this task to be as awesome as the task we have just done. So we crafted every animation with a lot of detail. And the boot sequence. So we have done a boot sequence that when you start looking at it, as soon as you turn the device on and you see it running at this high frame rate in such a small device, it immediately suggests how powerful the device is, and it sets the tone of how you're going to interact with it from that moment on. Nicholas?
So these guys gave you a good idea of a lot of different applications of motion, and each is tailored to a specific form factor. I wanted to go into a couple opportunities that we saw while doing all this work. First, use motion to tell your product story. As Gus showed in that, like sending an email confirmation, it was a moment for a lot of personality and had sort of a celebration for an action that was itself pretty impressive. We want you to find moments to make your apps like truly shine and focus on those. Beyond that, use the frameworks. The elements will cover many of the use cases you're going to have with animation, with a standard set of behaviors. You want to build on those, but then also pick moments to enhance. So using things like the shared element transitions, which allow you to persist an element from a state to a state or even between apps, or refining an existing component using theming or just building upon it, is a much better approach to doing this stuff, where you are spending your time on the most impactful portions of your app. And last, make motion part of the process from the beginning. There's so much stuff that has emerged from us working between motion and visual, motion and interaction, and seeing how those disciplines can build off of each other and enhance each other. It's really critical to get a polished result. Many of you have probably already looked at the spec. The motion portion of the spec is probably the richest and most complicated. It's definitely worth looking at. Ari and the others have put a lot of thought into sort of the underlying physics and behavior of these materials, and there's a lot of detail in there. You're also, please visit our design site and also get in touch with us at the Plus Google Design page. This has been a really exciting project for us, and we've been really excited to share it with you, but really this is the first step, and we have a lot of distance to go before this is finalized, and we really want to see how it applies to all of your apps. Thank you very much. So we're happy to take QA now. We'll also be up here afterwards if you want to come chat with us.
I had just a really brief question. Your little refresh icon spinner thing was awesome, and is there any way we can have it? Like, is that like just something you guys designed for this stuff, or is it somewhere in Android hiding in a folder?
That is the standard Android progress indicator, so it should pick up theming like any other element.
Sweet, I hadn't seen the arrow part on it. So.
The arrow transition is a customization of it. I'm not familiar with how we actually go about doing those things, but...
Fine, well, it's sweet, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. We've seen all those animations and they look really amazing. When I look at that and try to think how I'll do that with the current Android API, I feel like shooting myself. I've seen some of the presentations for the new APIs that are coming out, and I assume that all that animation is going to be much easier to do now with the new APIs.
Yes, we're making a lot of progress in that direction. So, for example, like moving things along curved paths, the object animator. I'm a designer, so I may not get it totally right, but the object animator can accept a path, so you can animate X and Y concurrently, create on a spline path, as well as the path interpolator. So you can apply customized acceleration, deceleration curves with cubic Bezier, pretty much the same format as you would with the CSS.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. In the beginning of your talk, you showed how elements don't need to bounce because they just arrive at their destination perfectly on time. But in the Android Wear, you showed how the red circle G kind of bounced down then out, like in its not animation. So how do you balance those different animations and when to use them or not?
Okay, so I think the bounce animation is a different and specific animation to make the user feel that the feedback is a visual feedback for the user input. So for all other animations, we do not encourage a bounce animation. I would not count the nod animation as a bouncy animation. It's simply a movement, a natural human movement that we incorporate into the UI as a feedback.
Gotcha. Thanks.
I'll just add on to that for a lot of the transitions that we're doing, we're really perceptive to motion. So having secondary motion or really, kind of like bouncy stuff sometimes can draw your attention to things that you don't really want people to look at.
This is a personal obsession of mine, so I'm going to go into a little more detail. We like to think of this like technologically advanced material as something that is driven by the system, and the system understands physics, and it can understand how to place something exactly where it needs to be and not like wobble as it hits there. But at the same time, it needs to be very responsive to the user. So if the user is pulling something past the bounds where it needs to be, to just simply stop would be almost hostile. We want it to accommodate the user, but in the times that it's moving things, to also land them perfectly. And so it's balancing the two of those things to get the right feel, as well as the right amount of sort of forgiveness when you pull past bounds.